All right, Connell, thank you. Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining Fox Business. Is there a risk that the United States could lose its AAA credit rating, yes or no?
No risk of that.
No risk.
No risk. Again, it can, so we can begin that process.
So Standard & Poor's is wrong. The United States will keep its AAA credit rating.
You know, people, absolutely, and people who look at the United States.
Well, Tim Geithner is wrong. In fact, he's 100% wrong, and he should be 100% fired. For the first time in the history of the United States, America has lost its top-notch AAA credit rating. It has been downgraded. That's the hope and change you got. The only change is that the country has changed. The nation's credit rating has changed. The S&P, Standard & Poor's, downgraded the United States' top AAA credit rating on Friday evening after the stock market closed in the evening to AA+. It's based on out-of-control government spending and record budget deficits. S&P had called for $4 trillion in deficit reduction. The deal that Congress made last week only called for $2 trillion over the next decade. So these Obama's failed policies are a part of our humongous government spending boom, massive bailouts, regulations on business, expensive healthcare reform that was slammed down everybody's throats, continuing ongoing wars and more wars. Of course, we've got the millions of illegal aliens we're supporting, and now 45 million Americans are on food stamps, tons of other entitlement programs, and huge government support going out. So the debts are building up and up. The implosion is happening. The credit agencies, or the one credit agency, S&P, not Moody's yet, but S&P is the one that downgraded this debt from AAA to AA+. And of course, this is the same S&P that gave the good credit ratings on the subprime loans back in 2006. So they were the ones that were going for the subprime loans and giving them good credit ratings for those, and we all know what that happened. So thank you, S&P, for that rating on that. But I do believe you're right on this rating here, because our deficits are humongous. They're going out of control. I mean, a few years ago it was $10 trillion. Now it's $14.5 trillion. So we have to rein in the spending. But what is this going to mean to you? This whole debt problem, what it's going to mean is the government is going to have to pay a higher amounts to service the debt. So what that means is interest rates to get a loan is going to go higher. Just like the subprime loan people that were getting those subprime loans had to pay higher interest rates, and of course they lost their homes after because they couldn't afford it. Well, that's the same thing the country's got to do now. They have to give higher interest rates on the loans that they take on. So the debt that they give, they have to give higher interest rates. So that means to service the debt, the country has to pay more money. And that will increase any kind of implosion, to take on more debt burden. And now to satisfy that burden, you have to pay more and more money. That means more and more printing of money to pay off those debts, the monetizing of the debts. And that could speed up any kind of crisis or crash or currency crisis. I mean, not a whole lot of safe areas now going on. So strict cutbacks have to be done, have to be enforced. What does that mean? That means if you're older, you're probably not going to get as much benefits as you thought. They're going to have to start cutting things down. And they shouldn't do that, but they're going to have to cut that down. The welfare recipients are going to be cut down. Money that you put into the system is going to be cut down. Social Security is going to be cut down. This could have ramifications on everybody in the country. This could degenerate into some big collapsing, big problems, safety issues. The police force might have to enforce more laws to get more money, generate some more income for the counties, for the state, for the city, for the federal government. I mean, hopefully it doesn't devolve into a police state, but who knows what's going to go on now. This is not a good sign. The only way to stave this off and stop this now is to get the house in order, build the credit rating back up. But of course, with the jobs shipped over to China and our industry shipped over to China, and the globalists, the elitists, the New World Orderists that have basically demolished our country in a matter of years here. We've seen it happening with these globalists and New World Orders that have just basically siphoned the money out of the country and shipped it overseas. Yes, I realize there's buildings going up all over Asia, all over China, big buildings. Well, that's because they siphoned the money right out of the country. Of course, everybody bought made in China at Walmart, and all the stores made in China at your Home Depot, made in China at your Lowe's store, made in China at your Walgreens store. All these stores have made in China items, and all that money leaves the country and goes to China. So that's what's happening. Things are going to hell in a handbasket very fast. And of course, China is telling us that we have to cure our addiction to debt. And that's true. But thank you, China, for being the drug dealer that's giving us the debt. You're the ones that are loaning us the debt and selling the products here. We've talked to you years about these problems and the government's out-of-control spendings and the Obama administration's exceedingly enormous, humongous spending and what it's going to do and how to prepare for a collapse and how you should buy your hard assets and protect yourself for rough times. This is from the Mail online. I'm going to put all the links at the end of this with my opinions. Analysts warn downgraded U.S. credit rating could lead to hiked interest rates and borrowing costs. This is going to send shock waves globally as the S&P cut our ratings down. And what this means to you is the borrowing costs will rise for U.S. government, companies, and consumers in the long term. Foreign creditors such as China who hold the U.S. debt will be concerned by the move. Funding costs for public debt could increase $100 billion as Treasury yields go up. And of course, the ratings, the standing of the United States in the history of the world is going to change now. And this is very sad because we're seeing a collapse of an empire happening. And us proud patriots that love the country, we see it happening. In fact, we saw it happening, and we've told you for years what was happening. But now it's happening. Your experience is day to day. You're living history right now. You're seeing history right before your eyes. And this is very sad, but it's important that you still take the precautions to protect yourself. Good luck.